Hey, hey, good morning, you guys. We're going to get started in just a few. I'm going to get things rolling on here, though. Hey, hey. All right, let me get this shared. Hey, Ryan. I'm going to get this shared into the right groups. Let me just figure out how to do it. I'm going to be getting started. Hey, Sharon. Hey, hey. Let me turn my phone on silent. The thing's been buzzing all morning. So, come here. First of all, we got to tell this little guy to be quiet. All right? We can't have any distractions. Go get in your bed. Look, we're going to get started in like 5 minutes, y'all. Let me know. How can you hear me? Can you hear me pretty well? Hey, Jim. Nice seeing you on here. Trying to see who else is on. Hey, Angie. How's it going? Tell me, you guys. Let me know. Can you hear me well? We're going to get started soon. And I want to make sure the sound is good because I'm going to get going in a little bit. So, anyone have any issues hearing me? All right, Sharon gave me a thumbs up. That's good. So look, we're going to be figuring out, I'm going to tell a little bit more about this, but we're going to be figuring out how to do these live events virtually since we aren't going to be connecting physically, like say with a meetup. So this one is going to be our first test run, all right? Thank you, Ryan. Thanks, Angie, for letting me know. Did someone just give me every emotion? I just saw like every emotion just pop up on the screen. Someone's crying, someone's angry, someone loves this, someone's laughing. Well, look, you guys, all right, we're going to get rolling with a few things. We've got about 4 minutes until noon. But so as you guys have been hearing, meetings, public meetings like that have been halted due to the coronavirus. So just out of an abundance of caution, these are how we're going to be doing our meetings moving forward. And so what I'm going to do is I want to continue to bring great speakers with great content to you guys so that this can still be a platform for the basically the education. I don't want it to stop during a time like this, but we're just pivoting, right? I think that's what a successful business person, a successful investor, they know when to pivot. So that's what we're doing here, okay? So look, ask questions. Ask questions here in the comments. I'm going to do my best to keep scrolling up. Sell, 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 Jack. Huh? I'm buying right now. I'm buying like crazy. Just the way that I'm buying is might be different, huh? I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, Jack, right now. Either way, guys, look. So now we're going to be doing these meetings. The next event we have scheduled is on April 8th with Brady Rains, who's going to be talking. He gave a phenomenal talk about a month ago on the state of the market. And as soon as I heard it, I went up to him. I said, "How can I get you down in our area?" And I said, "We need this message more than ever." That was a month ago. And I texted him yesterday. I said, we need you now more than ever. I'm trying to get him to where he'll do routine conversations with us. Because, hey, look, this isn't hurting anyone. Whenever this ends, it will then now be saved for people who can't make the event, right? So, all right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. So, for those of you who are either new to this or I'm seeing some familiar faces, but if you're new to attending these events, guys, so today's meeting was Real Estate 101. It is a class that we do typically in Slidell on the side of a restaurant. It's typically Taco Tuesday. I do not have a taco to be eating right now, to be sharing or anything like that. But you know what? In your own home, go find some salsa and some chips. I have some guacamole. I'll probably eat afterwards. But look, we normally do these Real Estate Investing 101 classes once a month. And the goal is there's 12 topics. You can join in at any time. You don't have to have one build upon the other. But they're very introductory classes. And it's a lunch and learn. Anyone is welcome, whether you are in the industry or you are an investor yourself, either new or looking to expand. So that is what this is going to be. The class is going to be on an introduction to wholesaling or assignments of contracts. I'm going to be jumping into that in a few. But let me just explain real quick. North Shore Real Estate Investors Association, guys, it is a free meetup for investors. It's a free meetup for real estate professionals or other professionals in the industry to attend. The goal is for this to be a educational and a networking source for our region and for our area. So we typically have 2 to 3 meetups a month. Right now, that is adjusting. Obviously, we're now going virtual, and we're going to work on getting some Zoom calls so that when I have speakers and whatnot, that I can, do other people. Today, I was already allotted to share, but I'm going to now get to practice whenever I bring in the speakers. Up until things change, we're going to be doing it this way, okay? So if you haven't already, like our page, North Shore Real Estate Investors Association, like it so that you can be notified whenever we go live for these events, whenever the next ones may be. I'm going to be doing my best to actually bring in more speakers because, hey, if we don't have to meet to do this, I'm going to be bringing us some content, okay? So these are free thanks to some local sponsors. We have one. I saw Christina Ruska. She's a lender with Loan Depot. She's one. Bob Norton, who's a real estate specific CPA. I'm sorry, Bob. I need to respond to that email about filing my taxes. I'm working on it now that I'm in the house. I'm working on it. We've got Justin Harris. He's a land wholesaler. We've got Total Construction and Renovation with Ryan Carday. He's a flipper who's also a contractor. We've got Mia Rogers, who is a realtor. She's an investor herself. We've got Quest Trust Company, for those of you who have retirement accounts. They are phenomenal. We've got, I always make a list of these, Wayne Sanji and Associates, their property management company. We have Florida League Title. I'm telling you guys, they're killing it right now. I've got like 9 files that I'm trying to get across, like between buying and selling. I'm trying to get it across the table right now because until something happens, whether that is the courthouse shuts down or whatever, they're doing their best. Let's see. Lastly, so I think I got them all. So our events are normally free. It's obviously free this way, thanks to these local companies. So let's go ahead and jump into a few things, okay? So today's topic, so that kind of gets you a little bit about who we are. Look, keep tuning back in. I want to be a local resource for investors and real estate professionals in the industry for information. And so in these uncertain times, whatever this looks like, we're going to be we're going to be bringing in some experts to come and talk so that you have all of the resources at your disposal. So we just happened to fall on the curriculum to where this month we were talking about the introduction to wholesaling. So these assignments of contracts. So right now, assignments of contracts or wholesaling for the last little bit has been a very big a very hot topic in the investing world. It allows you to get into investing. It allows you to get into the real estate business side with little to no capital, and it's an easy way to flip paper. And I'll explain what that means. But it is truly the power of other people's money. You're able to then flip a property using other people's money and make money off it, right? So we're going to jump into this. I'm going to share about an introduction to assignment of contracts. And on the very tail end, on the back end, I'm going to share what I'm doing. I'm going to share how I think what's going on in the marketplace is going to affect wholesaling, okay? If you've got questions, I'm going to keep scrolling up to see if you have what you have so that I can respond to it. But look, I'm going to tell you right now, if the only thing you know how to do is wholesale, you're going to struggle. If the only thing you know how to do is flip, you are going to struggle. If the only thing you know how to do is new construction, if the only thing you know how to do is landlord, again, you can fill in the blanks, right? So this is a phenomenal time while you are stuck inside, quarantined, whatever. This is a phenomenal time to really plug into some solid education and learn, okay? All right, so let's go ahead into what is wholesaling. So every industry has their own version of wholesale. In the restaurant industry, there is a wholesale market for everything from napkins to the tables, the furniture, to the machines, to everything like that, right? Every industry has it. Cars, retail, everything along those lines where you can buy at a discount and then you can sell it for a spread. So for example, the stores, how many of you guys have struggled to get toilet paper or whatever? Walmart is buying it at a wholesale price and then they're putting on the shelf for another price, right? Now, sometimes they clearance it, right? So they're able to move it quickly or whatever. So every industry has a wholesale component. In real estate, the wholesale component, how this looks like is basically it's when you are getting a property under contract at a deep enough discount to where investors, you can then sell it to an investor. You can sell that contract position to an investor and make a spread, okay? So I'm going to break it down, and I'll even break down some deal analysis for you. But the idea is that you're selling a contract position, in which case you are flipping a position in a contract, you're flipping the paper, right? You're not selling houses or anything along those lines. So these are typically going to be off-market deals. I know there's a handful of realtors in here, and I love working with you guys. Generally, these are going to be off-market properties, though, because at the end of the day, right now, well, let's just say right now is questionable, but there's generally been more cash buyers than there have been deals, okay? And so these off-market deals have been a phenomenal way for investors to get inventory. How many times, if you're a realtor or if you're another investor, you have people come and you say, hey, I need a deal right now. I need another flip. I need another rental. I need X, Y, Z. These are just another way. Wholesalers tend to be another way to source deals. And so let's go into how you can do it, okay? But before we do that, let me address why would someone ever sell at a deep discount to where multiple people can make money off it? Why would a seller want to do that? And that is where these wholesale deals become very difficult to find at times because you're generally dealing with 5% or so of the community. Most people, whenever we deal with them, we say, look, there isn't a reason for you to be selling to someone like me. Let me connect you with the realtor on our staff. Let me, X, Y, Z. Because most people don't need to sell at enough discount to sell to an investor, much less a wholesaler who needs to get it less than a normal investor's price because they need to be able to make their margin there, right? So with that being said, not everyone is a good fit for a wholesale deal, not every seller. So what type of sellers are you generally dealing with? So right now you are, it is generally going to be a distressed property or a distressed seller. Sometimes it's both, okay? That is primarily what you're looking for. One of those or the other, or both coming together. So for example, let me give you some of the reasons how the property can be distressed. Maybe it's a vacant or abandoned property, okay? It's been sitting for a while for whatever reason, and it's just been vacant, it's been abandoned, and trust me, the longer it sits, the more issues that causes. Maybe it just needs a lot of repairs, and the retail market would not be interested to buy it. Or loans wouldn't qualify for that degree of property. There's times we've worked with realtors because they literally just could not list the property because it's such a liability to even walk into it, okay? But whether it be major repairs just because deterioration, because it had been, the maintenance had been deferred for so long, or it's something like a flood, a fire, maybe massive termite damage, just something like that, right? To where it is just needs a significant amount of work. That's where you get the distressed property column. So whenever you are thinking about properties, maybe this is something that you are, hey, when you're driving around, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit in the marketing section, when you're driving to look around, look, it's going to be really noticeable to tell which ones are that distressed property, right? These are the ones that are boarded up windows, really overgrown grass, just things along those lines, right? It's really easy to tell. What is not so easy to tell sometimes when you're driving through a neighborhood are the distressed seller part, okay? And the distressed seller part is they have a pain point that is causing them issues where they need to fire sell the property, meaning they need to sell it at a discount enough that an investor would want to buy it at a wholesale price with cash, right? Now, I'm going to talk into some other options in the future, but ultimately, they just need to sell to an investor quickly. If I don't sell by this date, this will happen. So when you're dealing with a distressed seller, generally there is some type of trigger, whether that is, so one of the easiest ones is you've got tired landlords. So these are people who are, they've been a landlord either on purpose or by accident. By accident, I mean they moved out of their primary house. They said, oh, we owe too much. Let's put a tenant in there until we get some equity or something. Or, hey, let's try being landlords. And we really didn't set things up well. So they are accidental landlords, right? They didn't plan it. They didn't buy the property with the intention of it or anything like that, right? So you've got the tired landlord. They're just like, hey, I just want out. That was one, I'll tell you, my first deal, that was it. They just did not want to be a landlord anymore. They did not have it in them to say no to their tenants, and it was really wreaking them havoc. And they just want to put, throw in the towel. Hey, I just want to sell it as is. Want someone to take this off my plate, right? Some other distressed seller pain points: divorce. Actually, my first property had multiple pain points, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it also had a divorce pain point. So you had two people who are tied emotionally to a property because of the memories they built there. And then all of a sudden they're separated, and a lot of times that can become an issue. So you have inherited properties. You've got either bank or property tax foreclosures. You've got an unexpected job loss. And right now, let's separate what's going on right now in the world from this conversation. And I'm going to talk about what's going on in the world on the back end, okay? And so I'm going to give, because I can, like, part of me wants to keep stopping and say, hey, what's going on right now? Let me tag that in. I'm going to do it on the back end, okay? So you've got unexpected job loss. Maybe they're relocating for a new job and they're struggling to pay 2 mortgages. And then lastly, they just can't sell. Maybe it's a quirky property. Maybe it is in an area that it takes longer to sell in, whatever that may be, right? There's a handful more other scenarios, but those are some common ones, okay? So again, it's either because it's a distressed property or a distressed seller, okay? We call that a motivated seller. So how do you find these motivated sellers? Look, if you've got a question, I'm continually looking on the side, and I'm gonna see if you have any questions and I'll try to answer them, but I'm going to keep moving along, okay? All right, so we're generally looking for an off-market property that has that's either a distressed property or a distressed seller or both. So how do you find these, let's call them motivated sellers, someone who's motivated to sell at a discount? And so how do you find them? I'll tell you this, I was trying to count it up. I've done 15 to 16 different marketing channels. There's a variety of things you can do marketing-wise. I'm going to go through some of them, but at the end of the day, the only thing that really works is what you work. For example, you can't just do it once and expect it to give you consistent deal flow. Meaning you can't just do it once and say, hey, I want to get multiple business from this, right? But if you take something, a marketing channel, and you do multiple, you stay at it and you continue to market. Truly, when it comes down to it, wholesaling is a marketing business. You know, there is the conversation of, is it really investing? Really, it isn't. It is a business strategy, just like flipping is. Flipping is not investing. Flipping is a business. The IRS sees it that way. They see it inventory. Same thing with wholesaling. Same thing with buying and selling real estate as a realtor. Okay, so it is a good business model, but keep in mind that it is not long-term investing. It is something that you are flipping inventory, right? Just like if I were to go buy a whole bunch of packs of toilet paper right now, and then I started selling them, not price gouging, right? That would not be moral or ethical, and that's where the law is cracking down, right? But I'd be selling it because of demand. That is where you then are taking inventory that I got at a wholesale price, and I'm then selling it to a price that the market will pay for it, okay? So how do we find these motivated sellers so that we can get this inventory of these off-market deals? All right, so I'm going to talk about the free low-budget ways first, because when it comes to marketing, I say 3 things matter, okay? The first thing that matters is your budget. I can tell you right now, it is really easy to spend a lot of money on marketing when it comes to this. I know my company does. And it is something that can easily become a very high figure each month. So with that being said, be mindful that you don't overcommit budget-wise, because it's really hard to build consistent deal flow. And with that being said, is if you ramp up your monthly expenses and you don't have adequate deal flow to support it, I've seen a lot fizzle out in this business because they overextend themselves early on. So what I'd recommend is take these free and low budget marketing options, utilize them, close some deals, and then with that capital, reinvest in marketing, okay? Does that make sense? You guys with me here? You guys are real quiet question-wise. I'm not seeing any. I almost don't even know if it works. Look, so these free low budget marketing options, let's jump into what these look like, okay? So budget wise, so I told you there's 3 things. Budget, the first one is for rent by owners and for sale by owners. So generally for rent by owner and for sale by owner is on, you can find them online, like on Zillow or Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, or the buy-sell trade groups in Facebook. But you can also find them with the little, if I was down in my garage, I'd have a sign that I can show you that says for rent, the little red ones, right? They're about this high. Those are, the ones that are out in the yard are always going to be best, because if you have to drive by it to see it, less people have seen it, right? So if you've got a for sale by owner up there that looks faded, and it's on their front yard, you Google it, and it's nowhere else listed online. What does that tell you? Anyone want to chime in? Because I just want to test since the comments are working. I'm going to see if participation and engagement's working too. So look, if you've got a sign in your front yard, if you drive by in a neighborhood, you see a for sale by owner sign that is faded, and you Google it and see that it is not listed, what does that tell you? It's not on Zillow, it's not on Craigslist, it's not on Facebook Marketplace. What does that tell you? Might be an easy answer. Let's see. Easy answer. There we go. So said unsophisticated seller. Hey, that is a fun way to put it. The reality is if someone is not driving by that house, they are not seeing that sign. So this makes it really off market, right? They're not trying to put it out on the World Wide Web or anything like that. So whether it's for sale by owner or for rent by owner, I'd give them a call. Especially if it was faded. I would say, hey, my name's Courtney. I was just calling. I saw your sign. Look, I'm interested in this area. And I wanted to see if when they're for sale, it's a different conversation. Let's just say it's for rent by owner. I'd say, hey, my name's Courtney. I'm interested in this area. Especially if I just bought in the area, I'd say, hey, I just recently bought in the area and I'd like to buy again. I know you have it for rent, but would you have any interest in selling it? If I just sold a flip, I'd say, hey, I have some money right now. I just came into some money. Would you be, do you have any interest in selling? I'm interested in buying this area. I'm not going to make you fix it up or anything. Just talking with them, right? There you go. All right, you guys. I think it took me a little delay to see all these. But the first thing I'd ask them is if still for rent. Is it still for sale? These are good responses, you guys. It's been for sale for a long time. It's a fate. I'd look online and see if it's on those for sale by owner sites. If you just Google the address, sometimes you can pull it up. But yeah, if it's financially distressed, maybe they didn't want to list with a realtor because they couldn't. But yeah, if you have to drive by in the neighborhood to see it, ultimately when it comes to marketing, if less people have access to it, the better. Okay. So if it's a sign on a dead end road in a neighborhood, and if other people haven't driven by it and called them, it's a good opportunity in my mind. So same thing for sale by owner. Give them a call. Hey, is it still for sale? Just wanted to see. And we're going to go into a little bit of a script in a little while that I'll pull out, but we'll do some more of that. Another thing you can do is this driving for dollars. I might be younger, but I am a millennial. I might be technically a millennial, but I suck when it comes to technology. For the longest time, I had a notebook in my truck, and when I would drive around, I'd write down, 123 Main Street, Covington, and I'd put, boarded up, or I'd put, vacant, or I'd put, unkept on it. And I'd take those notes, but you know what sucked? Then I had a whole bunch of, I had a full notebook, and I had to get it into the computer somehow. So there's apps these days like Deal Machine. Propelio has an app for driving for dollars, and I think the Driving for Dollars app is out there to where you can actually drop a pin and take a picture of the property and do marketing straight from that app. So when you're driving around the neighborhood, when you notice things like a boarded up house or a severely overgrown yard, some abandoned cars in the front, overly stuffed mailboxes. Let's see, what are some other ones? Tarps on the roofs, air conditioning units inside the windows in a neighborhood that would have central air and heat, right? Stuff like that. So driving for dollars, you write down the address just from driving around the neighborhoods that you're interested in. Word of mouth, I talk to everyone and anyone and tell them what I do. I like going to garage sales, and so I went to one. Actually this past Saturday, I went to my mother's house to go bring my dog, who's behaving. For those of you who joined in the very beginning, got to see my dog, he's behaving. I brought him to my mother's house, and there was a sign that said very, very cheap garage sale, like 10 to 25 cents. And I said, let me go check this out, right? I'm telling you guys, some of you guys would be stoked. I found 15 real estate books for $1. I'm talking you like all Rich Dad, Poor Dad books. Like stuff like that. It was a steal. They were supposed to be 10 cents a piece, but the wind, we got, I pull up this big old stack of books, I'm carrying them, and I walk up to the front to go pay, because they said 10 cents on them. I said, you're making me a very happy woman right now with all these real estate specific books, right? For this cheap. And I said, because this is what I do for a living. And she said, those books, honey, have made me a millionaire. I said, oh, how so? So we got talking. She's now later on in her, she's older, and she is starting to liquidate her properties. And I said, here's my card. I want to know what properties you have available. And we just got talking. So talking to anyone you come in contact, you never know what you come across. So another thing you can do is door knocking. Is another free way of contacting people. Anytime you can knock on the immediate door, but if it's a vacant property, go to the neighbors. Go to the left, the right, like four-leaf clover it, right? Go to all the neighbors to the left and to the right and say, hey, what do hey, I'm so sorry to bother you. This might be out of the blue, but what do you know about this house next door? I'm a local investor just looking for properties in the area, and I can't help but when I drive by this to wonder what's the story, what's going on. I've had sellers be like, oh, they leave the key with me. Let's go inside. I'll show you it. Or a number of other things, right? They'll tell you the whole story. They'll give you phone numbers. They'll do whatever, right? So let's see. Those are some free ways, as free or low budget ways to then to contact people, right? So when it comes down to marketing to find these motivated sellers, you need 3 things to keep in mind. Budget. So those are the free to low budget ones. Ones that cost more money are going to be sending mail, writing them a letter. Maybe you drove around the neighborhood, you see them, and you write down and you send them a letter, or you pay a company to do it, or you buy a list of data and you send them mail. That's going to cost money for the data and the mail. You can do digital marketing, like you can do like a website, you can do pay-per-click, you can do SEO, search engine optimization, you can do Google AdWords and stuff, Facebook ads, things along those lines. So you can do the digital things. And you can also do things like ringless voicemail, text messaging, cold calling, and bandit signs. And those are the We Buy Houses signs around town. I will say when it comes to things like ringless voicemails, cold calling, text messages, bandit signs, there is regulation when it comes to that stuff. So be mindful. It's like the wild, Brent Moreno says it's like the wild, wild west. He says it well. Those things are like the wild, wild west when it means you need to be mindful. Did you know that in the state of Louisiana, when it's declared a state of emergency, there is some legislation about like robocalls during that time? And now you need to really have a good mindset when it comes to that, because in reality, you're not selling anything. You're only buying. So the solicitation part is separate, but you need to be mindful of what's going on. So if you're doing anything like bandit signs, cold calling, text messaging, RVM, understand legally what goes into that. Okay. So, okay, so you got the 3 things. You got your budget. Maybe you need to stick with the free to low budget part for a while. Secondly, the next thing is your availability. If you work 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week, whatever that looks like, if you work throughout, sorry, I'm just now, Larry and Angie both said about the neighbors. They said they love to tell all, the neighbors are the best sources. They are, y'all. So look, when it comes down to your availability, if you work 40 hours a week, you may only have an hour a day or 30 minutes a day to do marketing, right? So you need to understand, as far as your schedule goes, how much availability you have to give to this business. So you've got your budget, your availability, and then lastly, your personality type. I talked about door knocking. If it takes you 2 hours sitting in front of a house to door knock, I'm not saying don't get uncomfortable and push yourself, but maybe that's not your best method, okay? If you're the shyest person in the world, maybe you need to look at other options, okay? So another thing is, so those are the three things I want you to consider: your budget, your availability, and your personality type. Whenever you choose a marketing source, find 1 to 2 of those ways I just mentioned and stick to those. Give them a solid college effort and understand, track your numbers. We'll talk more about that, but look, understand that you need to give it some time. You can't just send one letter and say, oh, I'm not getting a deal. You know what? There's times it took me 17 times reaching out to someone for them to sell to me, okay? So what does the process look like? You now find these motivated sellers. What does it look like? So number 1, you market to the motivated seller, okay, through those means we just talked about. Number 2, you qualify them, meaning, hey, are we the right fit? Remember, we're only looking for about 5% of the community, because if they're just looking to save 6% for the realtor cost, they're not looking to sell to an investor. They're just looking to sell at a slightly off of retail, okay? Wholesalers are looking for a deep discount so that they can then flip it to cash buyers. So you need to qualify. A lot of people are going to kick rocks and say, tell me what the house is worth for, anything's for sale, even the kitchen sink. Hey, my kids are for sale if it's the right price. The dog is too. Look, those are not the people you're looking for, okay? So you need to qualify. So a lot of times I set the stage with, I train the people who work with me. I train them to say, look, they set the stage. We'll be quick to say that, hey, if we're not the right fit, we're not the right fit. Because what we don't want to do is be going on appointments when we're not the right fit for someone. For example, we don't want to be trying to convince someone who should sell with a realtor to sell at a deep discount if they shouldn't be selling to someone like us, right? Once you qualify and you know that it's either a distressed property that they are prepared to sell at a discount to an investor, or it is a distressed seller who, if they do not sell by then, this will happen, right? Then you set an appointment and you go on a walk through the property. This is when I recommend leveraging more experienced investors if you do not have investing experience or contractor experience, because most wholesalers get their numbers wrong in 2 ways. They get their numbers wrong on the valuation of the property and the repairs. So when I say leveraging experienced investors and things along those lines, contractors, things along those lines, is that will come typically not for free, or at least not many times for free, okay? So let me say that. So you need to do that walkthrough because you need to understand the condition. There has never, ever been a house that has 0 repair cost, okay? My house currently does not have a 0 repair cost. We work on houses all day long, and I still need to put a new vent fan in my bathroom, okay? Or I need to do X, Y, Z. There is no such thing as a 0, you need 0 money to renovate this house. That's not true. So anything like that. Hey, Mid, you still having technical difficulty? Anyone else having technical difficulty? Hopefully not. So look, there has never been that 0 repair cost. I don't care if it is a newer construction home. People tear crap up, and stuff just goes bad, right? So you're going to need stuff to work. So when you do that walkthrough, you need to get a good solid estimate of how much it's going to cost to get it in good condition, whether that's for a rental or a flip. The next process is you need to then go and search in what I call underwriting the deal. So whenever you underwrite the deal, underwriting is, think of a loan. When it goes to underwriting, that's whenever they run all the numbers. So during research, this is when you need to find out what the property would be worth. And we're going to dive into this in a second. And you're going to be running all the numbers in the underwriting stage. Next, you need to get it, you make an offer. And then whenever you make an offer, the goal is to get it under contract, right? After you get it under contract, you will then market the contract to buyers, to cash buyers on your cash buyers list. Lastly, you assign or double close to that end buyer. and then you go to closing, and that's when you can collect your assignment fee, okay? So let's dive into that real quick. So number one, market to motivated sellers. We just talked about this. Truly, wholesaling becomes a marketing game, okay? All right, Mia, I'm glad I'm getting most of it. I'll tell my neighbor. Well, no, it's just me on my Wi-Fi. What am I saying? So hopefully we got to figure out the broadband thing. Look, when it comes to marketing, guys, it's a numbers game. At the end of the day, you need to treat this like a business if it's going to pay you like a business. So you need to understand, you don't just go spend money like crazy and don't track it, because next thing you know, you're spending $10,000 and you don't know if you're making a profit, okay? Pick a channel of marketing. So maybe that is the door knocking, or maybe that is the mail, or maybe that is, pick a channel and stay with it, okay? Number two, when you qualify and you set an appointment, Brent Daniels out of TTP has a phenomenal these 4 pillars of pre-qualifying. The first one is the condition of the home. So when you talk to a seller, you want to say, hey, can you tell me about the condition of the home? Okay. I truly don't care about houses. I don't love houses. Okay. I don't love the sticks and bricks and, all that of houses. When I ask about the condition, I want to know, is this a pretty house or is this an ugly house? Meaning, the one I'm about to buy right now has a green tub and green carpet and a green toilet because it's stuck in the 70s. That is an ugly house, okay? Is it an ugly house? Like, does it need a lot of renovation, a lot of work, major repairs, or is it a pretty house? It's livable. Doesn't mean it's zero renovation, but it's livable, it's updated, it's modern, okay? If it's a pretty or a ugly house, okay? So the 4 pillars of pre-qualifying someone. Number one, it's the condition of the house. Number two, it is their timeline to sell. I usually make the joke, I said, when are you looking to sell? Is it, the next 2 weeks? Is it the next 30 days? Is it the next 3 months? What does it look like? If they're the distressed property owner, where if they don't sell by this date, something happens. If I don't sell by the 18th, I go into foreclosure. If I don't sell by April 1st, I go into foreclosure. Whatever, maybe it's something like that. Or, look, if I don't sell by the 15th of April when I close on my new house where I'm moving to in Georgia for my new job, I'm going to be juggling 2 mortgages. I need to sell. I can't juggle 2 mortgages. That's a timeline pain point, right? So asking them, hey, when do you need to sell by? If they say, oh, I don't really have any timeline restrictions, it's not necessarily, doesn't mean they're not a motivated seller. It just tells me I don't have to knees to chest to everything, right? I don't have to run and jog through it all. So timeline is important, right? And I usually explain why I ask that question to people. Number 3, the motivation to sell. This one is truly important. Pete Fortunato has a great quote that he says, he doesn't care if it is a falling apart mobile home or if it is a brand new construction house. If he's walking through with a seller that he believes has to have motivation, he'll say, why would you sell such a nice house like this? And just shuts up, okay? The reason why that's important is because you want to understand why. And a lot of times people hold this close to chest. They get in this negotiating mode from day one, and I'm like, I'm really trying to get out of that because I'm not there to haggle them. I'm there to help. So finding out, if you find out what the problem is, the underlying motivation of why they're looking to sell at a discount, you can then solve the bigger problem. And lastly, the price. If they don't know an exact price, they may know a range. There is a reality where some people just have no idea, and it does take a little bit of educating them on like comps in the area and the work that the property needs, okay? So those 4 pillars for pre-qualifying that came from Britt Daniels, we've got the condition, the timeline, the motivation, and the price, okay? All right, so now that we've got those, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to walk through. When you're estimating rehab costs, guys, This is something that grows with experience and knowledge, okay? So it's something that you should leverage if you have zero experience or knowledge when it comes to that. There is sometimes where you go by per square foot. Look, every house is different. Mobile homes are different from stick-built homes. And different areas are different. What it costs sometimes down in New Orleans might not be necessarily the same on the North Shore or in Mississippi or in Texas. Find ways to educate yourself. Find ways to get some hands-on experience. Just things along those lines, because oftentimes I'll have someone tell me, hey, it's going to cost $5,000 and it's a house with a green tub, a green toilet, wallpaper, and green carpet in a 1970s kitchen. And I'm like, it's going to cost me $5,000 to blink in this house, right? Like, it's going to cost a lot of money. So, and a lot of times, underestimating that cost hurts you to be able to sell a deal. So, you do not have to be an expert here, but learn from those who are well off in the trades, right? They're well experienced. So the next thing it comes to is the research and underwriting part. Guys, when it comes to running the comps of a property, the best source will be the MLS. Bottom line, okay? The best source will be the MLS. Please do not, the same thing goes with contractors and like realtors. Do not ask them to do 100 favors and not compensate them. This is a business. This is an industry. If you're going to use people's time, compensate them. The reason why I say that is oftentimes people say, hey, I'm not a realtor. I don't have access to the MLS. Therefore, I cannot run the recent comps. Let me just ask my realtor friend to run 5 comps for me each week. That's extra work, right? How does this benefit them? They're either going to run out of being nice really quickly, or they're going to say no up front. It's going to be this much, okay? The reason why that's very important is because you need good comps to be able to know how to make an offer. We're going to go over an equation for an offer soon. But when it comes down to it, if you don't have access to the MLS and you're not going to pay a realtor to run comps for you or a CMA for you on this, said property, then there is ways that you can go on the recently sold. So on Zillow, Propelio, you can pay for that software and have access to comps. There's some few other sites like that where you can access comps. Here's what you want to do. You want to compare apples to apples. Running comps is an art. I can give 5, I don't care if it's 5 to 10 realtors or 5 to 10 investors. I will say, here's the same data. Give me what you think a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot house in this neighborhood, what do you think it's worth? That was built in 1975. There's going to be a variation of answers that are going to come back. It is subjective to a degree, okay? So when it comes down to running comps, compare apples. Vaughn, I'm going to jump with you on your question in a second, okay? So that is one of those things that you don't want to, for example, one time I had a guy that sent me a deal and it was a house that was raised and all the comps he gave were houses that were on a slab. Do you think those houses compare? Do you know how much it costs to raise a house? It's in the tens of thousands of dollars to do it. And so that was a huge difference, right? If you ever had a appraisal done before, you know that one of the things they do in an appraisal for residential is they do the comparable analysis at the back end, right? And they pull some recent comps, and they do this plus and minus game. Okay, let's say the house is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot. They're then going to say maybe the only comps they have is a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath, and a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and then a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a pool. They're going to do a plus and minus on all of those for things that the original house doesn't have. You're not an appraisal. It's a lot of times it's hard to say, So just do your best to get as close to the original property as possible. I love neighborhoods that have been developed all at once, and there's like 4 floor plans for the whole neighborhood because you can truly go apples to apples. I'm doing a flip in a condo association right now, and there's only 4 floor plans in that condo complex. That is a phenomenal opportunity as far as getting more apple-to-apple comparisons, because if you know those 4 floor plans, then you can easily look for the recently sold in the floor plan that you the property that you're looking at. Okay, so compare apples to apples. Try to stay in the neighborhood as try to not cross major streets. Like for example, in Slidell, let's just say Pontchartrain. There's some neighborhoods on one side that if you're on one side of Pontchartrain Drive in Slidell and you're looking at a neighborhood over there and you're pulling comps, but you have to then go across the street, that doesn't help. What if you are, for example, in Covington off of Dog Pound Road and you're looking in the Tammany Hills neighborhood, but you're pulling comps from the Arrowhead neighborhood across the street? That's not going to help, okay? So you want to make sure, try to stay in the neighborhood as much as possible. Try to go back up to 6 months, but try to not go back further than 6 months if you don't have to. Don't compare a 2-story to a 1-story, raised to slab houses, new construction to old construction. Like if the house is 1970s, don't compare it to 2020 new construction, okay? So Daniel, to answer your question, you can use the recent sales on Zillow, not the Zestimate. Like not if you do 123 Main Street and it says a Zestimate. You can actually look on the recently sold. Propelio is a software that you can purchase. It has you can do monthly purchases, purchase of a payment plan with the software, and it does many other things. But one thing it does is allows you to have MLS access. There are some other ones, but I don't use them much. Look, running comps is an art. It takes practice. I would often, a lot of times when I first got started, I would have people say, hey, look, and this may be a good strategy working with like realtors and stuff, say, hey, look, this is a very serious opportunity. Like I wouldn't do it on just any deal, okay? Like say you have a very motivated seller. I would say, hey, look, these are the comps I ran, like maybe off of the recently sold on Zillow. This is the information on the house. The year it was built, the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, the square footage, and any amenities that have a pool, just stuff like that. And then say, hey, here's the recent comparables. This is property number 1. This is property number 2. This is property number 3 that I compared it to. And this is what I think the property be worth. Compare it to that and have someone check your work, right? So when it comes to running those comps, that's important, okay? So next, this is where I'm going to say why. So when it comes to making an offer and negotiating, there is a rule of thumb where, let's say if a property was fixed up, it is worth $100,000 fixed up. And I'm talking fixed up, it'll sell in the retail market. People would want to live in it. You're going to get multiple offers type retail market. Maybe even HGTV retail market, right? It's $100,000 just for easy math. Let's see. I didn't test this earlier with the camera. One second. All right, guys. Yeah. All right. So let's just say for easy numbers, this is what it would be worth retail. We're going to call this the after repair value, also known as the ARV. You're going to do it times 0.7. That gives you a 70% is what you're aiming for as far as being in the deal for. So right now, off the bat, if the house needed nothing, which we already established that there's no such thing as a house that needs no work, even if the house was perfect, most investors would need equity in the deal. right? So when someone says, so this is just the start of the equation. If someone says, hey, I just don't want to pay realtor fees, which is 6%, when we're looking for 30% off the top, do you see why it doesn't make sense if they don't want to spend 6% on realtor, like the realtor commissions? I then tell them, I'm sorry, honey, I'm way more expensive than that, right? The 6% versus the 30%. Do you guys see what I'm saying? So let's just say it needs a legitimate 30,000 in repairs. 30,000 in repairs. Let's say 30,000 in repairs would be maybe a new kitchen, maybe new flooring, paint, and it might be a new roof, maybe. That might be pushing it, okay? So far this is where we are at. I gotta work this camera. So we started off, the after repair value is 100,000 if it's in perfect condition. So we would go down to times 0.7. So 70% minus the repairs, that gets you at 40,000 is the max allowable offer for investors. This is the flip rule of thumb. Or if you're looking at doing the BRRRR method, like a cash out refinance on a rent. The reason why they're important to know is these are what investors are typically wanting to buy at, okay? So realtors, if you have investors who you send deals to and they struggle and you're struggling to get them to buy from you, it may be because of this. That 30% is one of two things. For a flip, those are going to be your holding cost and your profit. Trust me, holding costs are expensive. This for the BRRRR method, which is you buy with cash, you renovate it, you rent it out, and then you go get refinance. Most banks do from 70 to 80% loan to value when they refinance out. So landlords are looking to get most of their money back so that they can use that money again. So this is generally the investor equation. So I need to make an offer at 40,000 if I'm an investor. But if I'm looking to wholesale it, I need to get it cheaper. So you then work yourself into the deal. If you cannot work yourself into the deal, it is difficult to wholesale this property. But let's say, for example, they say, for whatever reason, they're willing to sell it at $35,000. You agree to $35,000. And so you get it under contract. If you get it under contract at the $35,000, I'm not doing good with this, y'all. At the $35,000, I'm going to do the big board next time, if there's a next time. Blame it on Corona. So look, if you get it under contract at $35,000, that means if you can find a buyer anywhere above $35,000, you're making money, okay? If you can buy a buyer at 40%, the $40,000, you can make a $5,000 assignment. If you can find a buyer higher than that, you've made more. If you find a buyer at $36,000, you've made $1,000. You building yourself into the deal is what will make this a deal. So, understanding most deals struggle because most people don't have enough equity. Most deals, the sellers doesn't need to sell at that much of a discount. Most wholesalers struggle because they can't get a $100,000 house at $35,000. Okay? That's why I'm talking about 5% of the community. So let's just say you guys have joined and you and the seller, you have solved their problem and they are happy to sign at $35,000. So then the next step is you want to contact a local real estate attorney. Florida Lead Title is one. You can find ones in the area and get a purchase agreement. And you want to make sure it's one. Look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Joe Smo on the internet can give you a contract. That does not matter. An attorney is what matters. Okay, an attorney is what will hold up in the court of law. I've spoken with my attorney yesterday and today. I like working with them because they're good. They're good to have, right? So you want to get the property under a purchase and sale agreement, okay? That's contract number one, a purchase and sale agreement. And you want to make sure that you have the contract looked over by attorney, and you want to address the following things. Please don't just get a fill in the blank contract. Know what it says. My years in property management taught me that you need to be able to explain. It's important that you can explain your contract to whoever is signing it, okay? You want to make sure you're offering, typically you want to address these things: price, the terms, which is generally all cash, sometimes it's not. The active sale date, meaning when is this going to close? How long is this contract valid for? The inspection period, and you want to clarify some things. Is it occupied? Is it going to be occupied or vacant at closing? Like, for example, if there's a tenant in there, if the seller is in there, who's going to pay the closing costs? Because sellers and buyers have closing costs on the settlement statement. You also need to put the earnest money in there to solidify and bind the contract. I know it's not. So that is where you want to put. Like, is it $10? Is it $100,000? I mean, is it $100? I have one right now. I have a deal that I had to put $1,000 earnest money just to get into the deal. It was non-negotiable with the seller. And so you want to talk about those things. Hey, is the refrigerator staying? Find out those things. So then once you have it under contract, you now have equitable interest in the property. You want to make sure that that contract says that it is assignable, because the next thing is when you go to look for a buyer, there's going to be another contract involved. So at this point, networking is imperative. You want to find local buyers in your area, because here's the thing is, you can have a good deal, but if people don't know about it, they're not going to buy it. And the way you make money, the way you make money wholesaling is for someone to buy the deal, okay? So you need to market your position in the contract. You're not going to say, I have 123 Main Street available. What you have is a contract for sale. The position in the contract is available. So be very careful how you market that, because that's when you start crossing a line into acting. You are not listing the house for sale. The house is not for sale. Your contract position is for sale. That is very important to know, because when you start listing houses for sale, if you're not a licensed real estate, the Louisiana Real Estate Commission will and should work with you on addressing the fact that you're acting like a realtor. So, and there's issues with that happening across the country is regulation, okay? So how do you find buyers? You find them at the real estate investor meetings. Right now, aside, the meetings, the 2 to 3 meetings that are free that I put on a month, there are multiple buyers in the room. I am a buyer. Like I said, I have 9 projects that I'm either buying or selling right now, and I really only think one of them is a wholesale deal. So you can find them online. We have a real estate group. It's hold on, I'm gonna type it in right now in the comment section. So if you're not looking, look in the comment section right now. So this is a group the REI run, and it's Southeast Louisiana real estate investors. There's 1,500 investors from the region, so that's a great place to find them. You can go to foreclosure auctions. You can just go just about anywhere you think an investor would be, okay? You want to, whenever you find a cash buyer, you want to ask them, what are you looking to buy at? Because maybe they're willing to pay more than that 70% rule. Maybe they're a buy and hold investor who's just looking for, 10% return on their money. Ask them what they want and use that to whenever you make offers, keep that in mind. Now, not every buyer will buy every deal, so you need to keep that in mind. I always say a reliable cash buyer who can close matters more to me than someone who's saying, "Hey, I can pay you X amount," but you don't know if you're confident they'll close. Whenever you share the property, you want to give information. You want to share the address. If you have it under contract, that contract is enforceable. Share the pictures and the address. Share your wholesale asking price. And then the terms of the wholesale deal, okay? Do they have to put down, does the buyer have to put down a deposit? Does the buyer have to close by a certain day? Does the buyer have to buy with cash? Things like that. I'm gonna tell you right now, you wanna deal with cash. If you're dealing with a loan, you've got headaches. So the next step is you then have an assignment. You get them, so contract number 2, if you're doing an assignment, which is the 99% of the time you're doing assignments, the second contract you need is called an assignment contract. You are assigning, you've got the original purchase agreement for $35,000. Let's say you have a buyer who's agreed to buy it at $40,000. You then will assign the contract, you do the assignment contract that outlines that they are buying for $5,000. They are buying your position in the first contract. Make sure you have a title company, guys. Make sure you're working with a title company that is familiar with these transactions. Not all title companies understand this. It happens very common in the commercial real estate realm, and it's happening more and more in the residential realm. I will say this, that it is important that you have good people on your team. Title companies can lose deals for you, meaning they can ruin your opportunity to make money if you do not clearly line this out with them and make sure they're on the same page as you, okay? All right, so I tell my buyers, anytime I talk with a new buyer, I tell them the difference between a wholesale deal and maybe one they find with a realtor is this. How many of you guys have ever bought from the foreclosure public auction? Like in St. Tammany, it's at the Covington courthouse. How many of you guys ever attended it? Let me know below. If you buy at an auction, maybe you bought online or anything like that, the auction mentality is different than the MLS mentality. And so that's how I compare these, and I train buyers to understand. Because if a realtor puts 123 Main Street up on the MLS for sale, they list it for the buyer, the seller, excuse me. They're going to say, hey, the asking price is $40,000, and then you make an offer, and then you get under contract, and you have an inspection period. Let's say it's an inspection period. During that time, you can then do a home inspection. As a buyer, you can do all these different things during your due diligence period. And if during those 10 days you find something, you can then back out of the contract. And it just depends on the seller. It depends on the situation, whether you will lose your earnest money or not, okay? Generally, that's what happens when you buy a deal on MLS. If that inspection period goes well, you move forward and you close on the deal. Barring that, like, fun goes through. Good job, Bill. And Sharon, too, yeah. Saying you guys have attended the auctions. So, a wholesale deals are more like auction deals, where there's a list of available properties for the auction. You need to do your due diligence prior to the actual auction, prior to putting an offer. And then, because when you go to put an offer, and if your offer gets accepted, you're buying the property as is, where is, and what it entails. So, the reason why wholesale deals are like that is, if I assign my interest in the property to buyer A, and he does due diligence afterwards, well, what if, like, the original contract was 30 days with the seller? What if he runs the contract low, and then all of a sudden he decides to pull out, and now I've got to go back and find a new buyer with less time, right? So it's one of those ways that it's also supply and demand. It's a supply and demand thing too. So ultimately, when it comes to wholesale deals, buyers have to do their due diligence up front before you accept an offer with them. For example, if they feel comfortable having a home inspection, they need to do that at the risk of maybe not getting the property, okay? So that's just important. So think about that. How would you have to train your buyer? Lastly, you then bring both of those contracts to the title company. If you brought your contract to the title company before you found a buyer. And if you fail to find a buyer, there are fees potentially that you will need to pay the title company for work they've done if they already started work. That's important. Again, this is a business, and understand when you're asking services and there's fees tied to them. So lastly, when you close, this is earned income. So let's say you make that $5,000. It will be the same as if you made $5,000 on a flip, or if you made $5,000 on real estate commission. The IRS sees it all as earned income. So let me jump into a few things. I know I'm going a little bit over time. Look, let's talk about some ethics. When people say we buy houses, if they don't have money, but they're saying that they buy houses, the question is that ethical? Here's where I want to include, guys, you need to have a solid team in place. For example, have access to capital. If you do not have access to capital and you're making offers on properties, is that considered fraud, right? Are you making offers, promises, to buy that you can't back up? So it's something to think about. At that point, if you do not have access to capital, when I got started, I had cash. I had access to capital, I had access to lines of credit. If you do not have access to that, I personally would recommend, this is just my opinion, I'd recommend having access to capital so that, and maybe that is 1 to 2 solid buyers that you have talked with them about the deal and you're making an offer because they're interested in buying it if you can contract it. Hey, you show them that deal, you say, hey, what do you need to get it at? And they say, hey, I need to buy it at $40,000. So you go in there and you make an offer for $35,000, and if the seller accepts it, you can move it for $40,000 to this person you talked to about it, okay? Something that's really important, guys, is that you're not dragging sellers along. For example, if you get a property under contract, if you can't find a buyer, ethically, you need to pull out of that contract sooner rather than later. Yes, exhaust all options, but one of the things is don't be greedy. Lower that assignment fee. A little bit, a part of something is better than a whole lot of nothing. I saw a guy say, I need to make $30,000. If the deal cannot support $30,000, I don't care what you want to make. You may want to make $1 billion. You can't. Like, if the deal doesn't support it, you can't. So don't be misleading and don't drag sellers along. If a seller is packing up their house, if a seller is pinning offers on new houses, if a seller is doing all these things, and if you're not able to follow through on your end, that is a moral dilemma, would you say? So explain to them up front what you're going to do. Don't let this be a sleight of hand, I tell them up front, either I am going to buy this or one of my money partners or another investor I know will buy this property from you. I do not hide it. I do not beat around the bush. Look, if you are intending on wholesaling a property, you need to prepare the seller. One of the things I do is during that inspection period, that's when I use that period to find a buyer. If I don't find a buyer during that deal, that's whenever I go back and renegotiate. Because sometimes I missed. I've only ever had that happen once. And again, yeah. Look, sometimes these motivated sellers are going through a very difficult time in life. Ultimately, whenever you are dealing with sellers who are distressed, maybe they're facing foreclosure, maybe they inherited this property, and every time they see it, they remember the mom who's passed away. Look, respect the place they're at in life, and make sure that they are that you're not dragging them along, okay? Just to try to make yourself money. Understand when you need to be solving problems. Wholesaling should be about solving problems, not creating it, you guys. Look, don't act like a licensed realtor, okay? You're not selling the property to buyers, and you're not finding properties for buyers. You are finding deals. and you're assigning your rights and your position in the contract, okay? But there's something called a daisy chain. Let's say I had this deal, this wholesale deal available, and I said, guys, the wholesale price for my position in the contract is $40,000. That's the asking price for this assignment of contract deal that I have available. And then let's say you're a wholesaler and you reach out to me and say, hey, you don't have access to money, but you say, hey, I'm a buyer, but in reality you're just a wholesaler and you know someone who might be interested in that. Don't do that. Look, if you're a wholesaler and you're not a buyer yourself, say, hey, talk with people. There's ways you can do joint ventures, but what I find a lot of times when a wholesaler comes to me with a deal, I ask them, are you direct to seller? Meaning, are you under contract directly with the seller right now? Because a lot of times it'll be, guy A is direct with seller, but you've got B, C, D, and I'm dealing with D. I don't want to be dealing with D because he doesn't have control of the deal, right? That's called daisy chaining. Don't do that. I got an email one time, it was 3 forwards deep, and I'm like, look, that is not a legitimate way to run this business. Look, there is a way to do joint ventures legally, and there is a way to bring buyers to deals and make money from it. That is something that you need to work out contract-wise. So lastly, guys, to be successful wholesaling, you need to leave meat on the bone, okay? The difference between a hog and a pig is that the hog gets slaughtered, and ultimately pigs will get fat and the hogs get slaughtered, right? So you don't want to be so greedy. For example, if you were wanting to make $30,000 on a deal that can only support 5, take the 5. And let me tell you, in this area, the going wholesale fee was around $5,000 to $8,000 max. So be mindful of that. I think that there's regulations happening around the country. I think it's very possible that things may change when it comes to wholesaling. There may be, so ultimately when it comes down to it, if you're doing it just as a hobby, that's one thing. But if you're wanting for it to either replace your income or be consistent income, you really need to treat it like a business and just understand that there's very well may be regulation that comes into play. So ultimately, if you have little to no money, when it comes to wholesaling, you need to have a lot of time and hustle, okay? The less time that you have, the more money and hustle you need to give to this, okay? Be resourceful, leverage people. If you come across something, look, the time to call me is not when you're standing in front of a seller who says he's facing foreclosure tomorrow. Not when you're right in front of them. Say, sir, let me find out all that I can and I'll be back with you. Call me and say, Courtney, hey, what can I do? It may look like us working the deal together. It may be like, hey, let me point you in some directions. But understand, leverage comes out of, I leverage frequently in my business. You don't need to be an expert at every strategy, but also know when you're over your head, okay? This is without a doubt a marketing and a people, like a problem-solving industry, okay? Give your efforts time to compound, meaning, again, don't just send out one piece of mail or 10 pieces of mail and say, I didn't get a deal from you. It takes work. Yeah. If it comes to creative deals, stuff like that, know that, so I'll say this, pre-foreclosure, the creative side of real estate investing, so like lease options, subject to, bond for deeds, commercial, those are all dealing with on-market properties. Those are all complex and another level. If this is your first deal, I wouldn't recommend diving into one of those because those are a lot more moving parts and they're a lot more complex. So I would, either leverage or whatever, okay? Look, I'm going to start wrapping up here. Let's see, Vaughn. I'm going to make sure I have some questions answered here before I feel. Okay, I see how it is hard to work with your own money on. You got to what type of team? I've got 2 new business partners, Charlene and Paul, and we just did away with a team of, what was it, like 7 people. We now hired a company to do work for us. Yeah, it's hard. You've got to figure out things work. We've got Paul, Charlene, myself. We've got an agent who works with us, and potentially another person who hired a company to do work for us. Look, let me get into the spiel about what's going on in the world right now. This is uncharted territory for anyone. So if anyone is telling you they know exactly what's going on, they are full of crap, because this is uncharted territory for even investors who've been in this for 40 years, okay? And the reason why I say that is this is not 2008. This is not post to the 9/11, and this is not. Yeah, this is nothing that anyone has ever experienced. So this is one of those things where we're taking it day by day and adjusting things myself. I just went into my library and I said, these are a lot of the books I'm reading right now. One of those is about reducing debt in my life. You got the Gary Keller book, Shift. These are things I'm reading while staying and working from home. This is a time to look at your investing strategies. This is my thoughts on this, guys. Wholesaling will become difficult. I've already seen buyers get trigger shy. They're not wanting to commit to buying. So this is a time where I believe wholesaling may not be as prevalent. But I'm going to say that. Be mindful. Right now, buyers may be scared to buy because no one knows what's going to happen. So if you get a house under contract, not only may it be difficult to find a buyer, but I have 9 deals at a title company right now, either buying or selling. I don't know if I had a closing I was supposed to have on Monday. The seller is deeply sick. We have to push it back. I have other deals where, we're not sure if the courthouse is shut down. We're not sure what we're going to be able to do. So look, it is one of those things that is ultimately going to be something that you need to look at your investing strategy. You need to look at your own personal finances. You need to look at your own strategies and say, look, this is not a time to drag sellers along, making promises you can't keep. And you need to say, hey, what can I do? This is a great time for education. Sharon, the main one is Shift with Gary Keller, Sharon. A lot of those books, I'll post on here if you want to look for some of these books. Here's a book list. It's Angie. Angie, you said I had a realtor approach me about listing my properties for cash on MLS. Have you done this, and would you recommend it? Angie, I know MREC, so the Mississippi Real Estate Commission is really, they would not, I've already talked to a few people in Mississippi. They do not, they frown upon that. You may have a realtor who will agree to do it. How long they will stay licensed is another thing. So most people would do anything, right? But whether or not it's allowed. The other thing is, I've looked into that for Louisiana because the biggest cash buyers list is on the MLS. Because you are not the owner of the property, it is an issue for the Real Estate Commission in states to put it on the MLS. Right now, I do not see any viable option to do that, and I'd be very cautious with it. And also, if it goes on the MLS, what does that conversation look like with the seller, right? What does that look like? Because when it goes on MLS, it goes on like 300 sites, sub-sites. So those are important things to consider. I'm going to take a few more questions real quick, you guys. Wholesaling is a good tool to learn. It takes little to no money to get into the deal. But I will say this, guys, I do not know what it's going to look like right now in this changing market. So it's a good tool to have. Just understand you need to reach out to your buyers, see how they're doing right now, who's buying. And like I said, we're buying right now. We're struggling to see what we can get across the closing table, okay? Look, if you ever have a deal, look, I frequently buy from Slidell to Hammond. I'm happy to work with you. I've done joint wholesale, like co-wholesales before. I've bought, from wholesalers before. I don't mind paying wholesale fees, anything like that. So yeah, let me know. Look, guys, stay tuned. Like our page. Stay tuned. We're going to be having more of these. I'll make sure that we have a better bandwidth to handle this stuff. But look, you guys have a great day. And please stay safe. Please stay safe. And if at all possible, stay at home, okay? Hey, have a great day, you guys. Thanks for waiting and working through some of the technical stuff. But talk with y'all soon. Thanks.